if you imagine it's like some 15-year-old girl in like, Bulgaria that's an incredible artist in Blender and is making these like fabulous sneakers that everyone's buying in FIFA. She's now competing with like Nike and Adidas and these mega brands that have had so much built up sort of legacy, whether it's global distribution or supply chain management, all these things that make it really hard for new creators to become entrants in the market. Like this whole notion of basically levels the playing field for new creators, which I think is super exciting.
Alejandro, how are we doing?
I'm doing so well, it should be a crime. Who do we have on today?
We have Donnie Dinch, the CEO and co-founder of Bitski, which is an NFT platform, just raised a $19 million Series A round led by Andreessen Horowitz, also invested from Jay-Z, Serena Williams, and others. They have a lot of exciting things in the works. So what are you excited about for this conversation?
I think I have a personal affinity to Bitski. That's where I bought my first art NFT. And so there's something attached to it, but I'm really interested to find out what are they thinking about the future, because they announced the raise and then they went silent. They had a couple brand activations and partnerships, but outside from that, we haven't heard much about what Bitski's plans are for the NFT space.
Well, we are about to find out. So before we do, just want to remind everyone, head to nftnow.com. Be sure to sign up for our newsletter. We are always taking everything that's happening in the market and distilling it into actionable insights weekly into your inbox. Without any further ado, Donnie Dinch with Bitski. Donnie, how's it going, man? Glad to have you on the NFT Now podcast.
Going well. Thanks so much for bringing me on here. I've been wanting to join for quite a while.
The feeling has been mutual. We have been wanting you on for a while, and I'm glad we're making it happen. So why don't we kick it off at the start? Tell us a little bit about how you got into NFTs and what was your journey to founding Bitski?
Yeah, absolutely. So Bitski was started out of a labs company with some co-founders that we had previously started another company in music. It's a company called Will Call, acquired by Ticketfly, and then subsequently Pandora. We left Pandora and wanted to work together again. We had no idea what we wanted to do. We bootstrapped it for a couple of years and eventually got to what is Bitski. And really, it was like January 2018. So like kind of ahead of the game here, I feel like, where I saw CryptoKitties and, it was kind of cool. Like I wasn't like overly in love with, I didn't know what the hell was going on. It was super complicated, but I liked this idea that one, it was a blockchain like application that wasn't purely financial and that it basically kind of unlocked this idea in my head that was like, okay, if nothing else, a blockchain is this global source of truth of who owns what and what that stuff can do. And simultaneously, I was spending like $200 a month on like banana skin outfits in Fortnite, and I had no liquidity on these things at all. And it seemed almost criminal. And so there was kind of this eureka moment where, I thought everyone should just be able to own their digital things and have liquidity with them. And that should just be normal. And ownership should just be this primitive of the internet. And so that was like January 2018. And it being someone who was not like an engineer or not overly crypto savvy at the time, we were like, okay, let's say hypothetically Epic Games wanted to like create all of these skins and make them as NFTs and allow people to trade and sell them and all this stuff. What stuff needs to exist in order for that to be a reality? Because it's still kind of early infrastructure days. And that's kind of how we started building Bitski. The first thing we thought everyone needed was an easy to use wallet where they could single sign on and connect it to their Epic account, hypothetically. They didn't have to worry about private keys, and we can talk a little bit more about that. Where it's kind of almost like the Gmail of wallets. So we built that. We ended up building a handful of developer services, shipped all of this around the end of 2018. And so the next year and a half, candidly, just kind of like not finding product market fit. Like there's a lot of work that we put into getting people to use these things. We kind of have almost like this if this then that, where you could key off of any off-chain event to execute an on-chain transaction. And basically, people didn't want to bring NFTs into their product yet. Fast forward to I guess winter 2020, early 2021, we had always kind of hoped someone would build sort of a Shopify light on our platform in order to sell NFTs with credit cards, and no one did. So we did it, and 6 weeks later we shipped it, and that kind of blew up. And so the rest is kind of in history.
That's really fascinating, man. I love that story, and I love that persistence of like that perseverance of like having that aha moment, but still continuing for 18 months. Most companies, startup, that's like eons in terms of like progress and things of that nature. Can you speak a little bit more about what having this perseverance and this clear vision? Can you talk to us about the mission of Bitski?
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's a couple things. A good friend of mine said, like, after we ended up, kind of finding product market fit and doing our Series A, it was like the magic was that you guys stayed together. Because, to have one person who's an absolute nut and like trying to like, heads down on this moonshot idea is hard enough, but to have three people that are really into it, or four, is absolutely bonkers. Really for us, anytime things got like tough, we kind of had this gut check moments where we're like, people are going to own their things on the internet, right? Like, this is inevitable. Like, Pandora's box is open. Like, blockchain is a thing. It's not going to slow down. We're not going to start spending less time in digital places. This is absolutely inevitable. Like, let's keep trucking. And I'll be candid, like, whenever we raised our Series A, like, we were like the bank account was like dusty. Like, there wasn't a lot going on in there. And luckily we had great investors that, had got us to the point that we needed to be. But, we kind of think about it like we were just kind of turtling down, working on this moonshot idea. And yeah, finally it kind of hit escape velocity, which is pretty nice.
Totally, man. Like, speaking of that Series A, you just closed it, a 19 million round, led by Andreessen Horowitz, also featuring investments from notable figures like Jay-Z and Serena Williams. Tell us how that happened, and how will those funds be used?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's been a few months now, and in a lot of ways that those funds have been used is building out our team. So we went from, I think when we fundraised, I think we were a 4 or 5 person team, to now we're, I think, at 26. Very ambitious plan. And I think that that's actually, the reason we did the fundraise, and really, like, Bitski has always had like sort of a 10-year goal. We see a lot of excitement. Like, we believe at the most primitive level that people will own their digital stuff, and what that means and the type of things that they'll do with it, TBD. I think one of the big waves that we've seen so far over the past few months has been the speculative nature of over art and other sort of fun NFT projects. And I think that, I'm sure there's going to be a lot of other weirder stuff that we do with the things that we own on the internet. This seems inevitable. And so, yeah, I think that in Andreessen, we work with Sriram Krishnan, who is actually on the consumer team, not on the crypto team, and got really excited about just the type of stuff that, that you could do if you have a bit of a service layer that's abstracted from the protocol. So I would say, like, loosely analogous, it's almost something like Cisco, where Cisco built like an education and service layer on top of TCP/IP and the .com. There's a little bit of like similar roots as to what we're trying to do with Bitski. And maybe you could splash a little bit of Stripe in there as well. But really, we think a lot of, like, whether you're a virtual world or a social product or any type of places where you'd want people to own content and have liquidity with that content, you're going to need a tool set to really provide that doesn't mean necessarily going straight to the raw protocol. So that's kind of where Bitski fits in, and that's kind of how the round came together. And I think a lot of people really, I mean, I think, Alejandro, you mentioned, like, your first NFT was, purchased on Bitski, and like, I think a lot of people's first NFTs have been purchased on Bitski. I think now we're almost at like 200, maybe 220,000 wallets, people created, people buying stuff on Bitski. And a lot of it's like, this is their first foray into that. And so one fundamental, principle we have is that we don't believe that you should need to be an expert in blockchain or cryptocurrencies in order to participate in, like, owning digital goods and the markets that come around those. And so yeah, that's kind of how one of the primary reasons the round came together like that.
And that's really awesome. And I love that explanation around making sure that there's a consumer layer or service layer on top of that. And, those 19 million seems to be very strongly used, because it's been some great feedback around this. You have had a lot of brands starting working with you. So it seems like Bitski is looking at positioning itself as the go-to platform for everyday consumer brands to work with. Can you speak more to this?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I would say that first and foremost, Bitski is going to be a platform company. We will have a few first-party products on top of our platform in order to provide context for other people on how they can build on our platform. A great example, and we're not nearly at this level, but in the same way when the iPhone came out in 2007, there was probably 7 or 8 different apps on the phone. before third-party developers started building things for it. And yeah, we've had the opportunity to work with a lot of larger brands. A lot of people are excited about providing their like community with different type of like collectibles or digital goods, and they understand that most of those folks aren't really crypto savvy. Even the people on those teams are having trouble setting up things like MetaMask, and so that's been a good opportunity for us. And quite candidly, it's been almost like a testing ground for a lot of the things that we've been building internally, and a lot of the APIs that we're building is like getting feedback from folks that are not sort of endemic to the existing crypto crowd, that are really excited to take advantage of some of these new user experiences that digital ownership enables.
Makes total sense. I know one thing I know that we've spoken about is sort of like our shared sort of like vision for the future of NFTs, in which, like the next 100 million users are coming in, and how do we get to there? One of the missions of NFT Now is driving mainstream adoption of NFTs, and I know that that's something you're very focused on. So I'd love to hear a bit about, from your perspective, what are some of those milestones that you feel are most critical for driving that sort of mainstream adoption?
Yeah, I mean, I think the lowest common denominator across everything is that if you're going to own stuff, you need a place to put it. And so that's really, really on the wallet. And wallets have to make a huge leap forward. The way that the Bitski wallet exists right now is primarily web-based. And we're going to be announcing relatively soon our iOS wallet, which is, I think, pretty fabulous. And there's going to be a lot of exciting stuff that comes along with that. But I think the biggest part is just, okay, if I'm going to buy something, how do I own it? And how do I traverse the metaverse with this? How do I take it? And by the way, I should take a step back. We see metaverse as not one new place, but a constellation of all the places you already spend time, but now with this new connective tissue. And we see sort of NFTs as sort of the atomic unit of that connective tissue. And so I think that is really the biggest thing. If we talk to any, let's say, major game developer, or anyone that has a tremendous amount of scale and wants to introduce this notion of NFTs to their audience or their community, the first thing that they always say is like, okay, well, they don't understand anything about cryptocurrency, or they don't know this. And I think that that is true. I think also there's a young demographic of people that are really excited about Web3, and I think that they are learning. And I think that that's actually the balance is, how much do you abstract the complexity of what's happening versus communicate it and say, hey, now you have this cool thing where it's owned. You can look at here and on Etherscan, and it's like on the chain and all these things. And so I think so. Basically, lowest common denominators is a great wallet experience. I think that's probably one of the biggest hurdles. And then also making sure that the places where I guess the next big use cases of NFTs don't necessarily need to become blockchain developers or Solidity experts in order to enable some of these new primitives. And so let's say, like, if you wanted to have a game, let's say a complete hypothetical like FIFA, and say FIFA wanted to create a marketplace for sneaker designs. They publish a standard, and any 3D artist could download that file, create any shoe they want, put it in the FIFA marketplace, and anyone could buy it and sell it and dress their players with it. That is very cool, but you're not going to have FIFA build out an entire, blockchain team and write all their contracts. They're going to need a handful of services and APIs in order to just do that, enable whatever experience they think should exist. So I think that's probably the next layer is enabling those things. And then, even taking a little bit step further down the rabbit hole, I think that basically in that FIFA, example that is totally hypothetical, that's read-only access from FIFA's perspective, meaning, okay, I see that this person has a piece of third-party content. I will display that in the game when they're playing. Or I think it gets super exciting is when you start giving these places like write access. Or, okay, this person won, 50 matches with these boots on. Let's go ahead and like upgrade them to gold, or like let's change or modify the look or the abilities of this sneaker or this soccer cleat, which I think is just wild and fascinating and just really wrecks the existing design space of a lot of like virtual worlds and games that we've seen today in a great way. And it kind of levels the playing field. I'll say this too. It's like, if you imagine it's like some 15-year-old girl in like, Bulgaria that's an incredible artist in Blender and is making these like fabulous sneakers that everyone's buying in FIFA. She's now competing with like Nike and Adidas and these mega brands that have had so much built up sort of legacy, whether it's global distribution or supply chain management, all these things that make it really hard for new creators to become entrants in the market. Like this whole notion of basically levels the playing field for new creators, which I think is super exciting.
That's incredibly fascinating. I love those assets of like the facets of elevating creators into mainstream capabilities and creation, right, and actually empowering them. Yeah, you touched on a lot of actual facets of owning a platform. So I'd love to dive deeper into that. What are some of the less obvious challenges about owning and operating an NFT platform in 2021?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, well, I don't know. I mean, one of the biggest challenges is that the blockchain is not great all the time from like a developer perspective. Getting responses and the time and the latency, and managing that experience to people that are new to this. Like, for the past 15 years, people have been buying something on the internet and they immediately get it. They immediately get access to it. And a lot of times, it's going to be delayed, and and our support requests will pile up. And so I guess Bitski's a little bit unique in that, when you purchase with a credit card, we still mint directly on the Ethereum blockchain, but we use we basically use our own stuff. We use an automated wallet that says, okay, it listens to this event, this person purchased this NFT, and this is their address, mint directly to their wallet, and that'll fill up in a queue. Because sometimes, like when we did thing with like Jeff Staple and Artifact, I think we sold, I don't know, a bajillion, I don't know how many NFTs in like 5 seconds. And so obviously you can only do 12 transactions per second on the Ethereum blockchain. So we have a great queuing mechanism, but it takes time to kind of mow through that queue. And so, adding different sort of, I guess, indicators and communicating better feedback loops as to what's going on, I think is important. I think the other thing is just the amount of weird things that everyone wants to do is so exciting, but it's, every small variant that you want to do of something is just makes it X more complicated from a platform perspective. Generally, when you're building features on a platform, you want to do it in such a way that, is going to be utilized by, 80% of your audience. You kind of think about, okay, is this something that I think a lot of people will like? Yes. Okay. This new customer will now drive the feature development of something that we think makes a lot of sense. But sometimes, that you can't, people want something that might seem simple, but it becomes really, really complicated. Also, just a tremendous amount of inbound and load. Obviously, I think everyone in the market has learned a lot about scaling this year. The traffic has been, bananas. At one point, back to that, actually, that Jeff Staple Artifact, we hit Stripe's API processing limit of 100 requests per second, which is kind of nuts. We never really thought that would happen. And so, there's a lot of things like that. But ultimately, the other side of it is that there's actually a genuinely strong amount of optimism and forgiveness, where people are like, okay, this is new. I don't know what the hell's really going on. You guys seem nice. Keep us posted whenever things mint or whatever. And I think having, it's requisite to have a strong community presence in your Discord and to communicate with all the different new folks. We have tons and tons, like, when we're working with some of these brands, it's their audience that are in their community, they're now buying these NFTs and they're coming to our Discord to learn more about it. And so just making sure, making it clear that is a requisite role at our business and our company and any platform, I think has been really important. And if you look at the ones that have done well, I think it's the ones that have managed and helped out their community the most.
Yeah, I think that's a really salient observation and some really great points you're making. I think that kind of jumping off that, as the CEO of a major NFT platform, I'm sure that you're always keeping an eye on developments of like the regulatory landscape, and I'm curious to hear what your thoughts are currently about like sort of the potential future regulation of NFTs and how that could affect platforms.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's going to be tricky. The good news is, I think there's a lot of good people running platforms in this space, and we all know each other. We've all, any of the platforms that exist today, for the most part, have been working on this for quite a long time, and are comrades in the period where no one gave a shit about NFTs. But it is something that we're keeping an eye on. I think there's a lot of trickiness around getting cost basis and understanding how much something costs, especially if you buy something that wasn't directly on chain or from an on chain transfer. It's not just implied what the value is. So I think there's going to be a new set of standards that are going to start to evolve. There will basically be a coalition of people that are working together. Even you've already seen a little bit of this with, what Manifold has done with their sort of royalty standards that they're putting out, which we think is absolutely fabulous. And it's really kind of up to these platforms to help educate the government on a way that actually makes sense. I don't think there's a world where there is no amount of regulatory anything on NFTs indefinitely. I'll tell you, I had a conversation with a CEO of a publicly traded game publisher that's very, very large and super excited about NFTs. The first question was like, well, how do we tax these things? If someone buys a $5 sword and levels it up and now it's worth $500, how do we handle that? Like, as a publicly traded company, we can't, we can't just do it without, handling that. And so I think that that's actually kind of going back to an earlier question, probably another sort of checkbox that's going to have to be addressed before we see that 100 million MAU sort of use cases exist. But at the same time, there's also seems to be a certain amount of like implied safe harbor and lenience where, everyone's like, we don't know what the hell these things are going to do long term. So let's just allow some creativity now. But I think everyone's aware of it. Everyone is keeping a close eye on it.
That's really spot on. I appreciate that perspective. And so with that understanding, with that vision of seeing what the metaverse is going through, what is the play for Bitski in this metaverse?
Yeah. So basically, Bitski has sort of like two facets. It's, a developer platform with a marketplace on top. And that marketplace will have some big updates coming very soon. And then the other side of that is a wallet. And the wallet, like I said, right now, recently passed 200,000 wallets. That wallet will be a very big part of where we think Bitski fits in. Because it is a single sign-on OAuth compliant wallet, it can be connected to things like a Snap account or a TikTok account or a Epic account, all these different accounts that already exist. So I think that's a big part. I think the other thing is that we are enabling other people to build whatever they want with respect to NFTs in their products. So say if you are a game and you want to have a marketplace in your game, that makes a lot of sense. If you are an existing, marketplace that sells physical goods and you want to start integrating digital goods, Bitski has services that you can just, and APIs that you can do to actually, create NFTs directly from your existing CMS and to, manage the sell and the secondary sales of those within your place. So Bitski is really trying to build the underlying platform that powers everyone's marketplace in all the ways that people want to add utility and value to NFTs. That's really where we see the biggest opportunity, and providing a great user experience and wallet as well.
Sure, that makes sense. And, I think you touched on this a bit too, but, kind of with that forward-looking mentality, well, it's been interesting to see how digital collectibles, digital art, proved to be popular use cases for NFTs that drove a lot of mainstream adoption. But what do you think are some of the less heralded use cases for NFTs that you have your eye on that maybe, the market or the public haven't quite caught on to yet?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, I think probably for a lot of the people from this audience, it might sound familiar, but I think using NFTs as sort of a method of gated access, I think is very, it sounds simple, but I think it has a lot of large implications. I think the idea of having, if say you're hypothetically like an artist on tour or, a musician on tour and you want to publish an NFT, every week that's like a, behind the scenes, clips and stuff like that. And you have to basically, as a fan, you need to purchase that NFT weekly in order to maintain access to like an ongoing Discord or something. So there's sort of like episodic content that it's up to you to create good value in order for people to want to continue to contribute. And so you have some sort of like some interesting patronage vibes there that I think make a lot of sense. I think that, my previous company was in ticketing. I know that ticketing is one of those things that everyone thinks blockchain is a great tool for, and candidly, it is a really good tool for it. I think the challenge is there's just it's like a human debt problem in the ticketing world at large, where it's still run by a lot of people that don't really care about new technology, and they've put together a series of hacks. So they have, their monopoly that exists today. But I do think that for, new projects, obviously what FWB is doing and their sort of ticket scanning method, I think is very cool. So I think all of that makes a lot of sense. And I think the next wave outside of, art and collectibles is going to be like digital commerce with digital goods. I think having things that I can use to represent myself like in a digital place in the same way that, the sweatshirt that I'm wearing now or, the stuff behind me like represents who I am. I want to be able to do that in a virtual way across all the places I spend time. You've already seen this with like PFP photos on Twitter. So to the extent that we can get that to be more prevalent, and I think in bigger games, in more places, I think that's going to be a huge deal. The other thing is just, let's say hypothetically every Instagram post or every TikTok is an NFT. What does that mean? I don't know. I don't 100% know if there's people that are willing to pay for it, or if owning it unlocks some sort of interesting use case. That sounds very, very exciting. The way that I look at NFTs right now is similar to like a website in 1994. Super excited because we got pictures and text, like mind blown. But the reality is these things are like Turing complete pieces of software, and they're more of a platform than they are a medium. And so I think that is incredibly exciting, but in the same way that I didn't know that someone was going to make Uber when you had access to my location and my phone, I don't know what kind of crazy things people are going to make with NFTs. I'm just kind of hell bent on making sure that they have tools to like explore all those crazy ideas.
You kind of like, that's spot on. I love that Uber example. Like when somebody had access to my location, nobody thought of Uber. Everybody was like, how can I transport myself, right? Like in that capacity. So I love that metaphor there. And so like, what is if you had to refine it down to one single area of focus, what's the thing that's most exciting for you in the NFT space?
I think the most exciting thing right now is probably building a great wallet experience. I know that we have a couple of those out there right now. The construct that is a wallet, in my opinion, is yet to be defined. I think we're kind of in like the email world pre-inbox. We have this sort of protocol of things, but how do we use a wallet? How do we make that a daily, habitual use case? What information do I want from a wallet? Like candidly, I don't know that my wallet should just be a place where I open up and see my stuff. Like, sure, that should be a part of it, but I think that as a construct and as an app, there's a much larger opportunity there. So that's something that we've been, heavily thinking about.
I love that. And, I think some of the listeners too would be curious. I know I'm curious, like what's in your wallet, Donnie? Like what are some of the NFT collections that you've, the kind of the highlights of your own NFT collections, the NFTs you've collected? What do you have your eye on? What catches your eye?
Yeah, absolutely. I have some early Axies. One was a gift from Jiho, which was kind of cool. I actually met him at like a 15-person meetup in New York in 2018. And I was like, what the hell is Axie Infinity? And like, yeah, anyway, obviously it worked. And then I recently just got a Creatures. I really like, actually, it's probably one of my favorite collections are the Creatures. I think that, I don't know, they're so weird and oddball and just kind of, I like it. Loot was very compelling. So I think maybe the loot hype wave is probably a little past peak, but I think what's really important about loot, and so I ended up, by the way, luckily bought a loot. I didn't even know, like I met Dom way back right before he actually launched Vine. And I don't think he and I know each other that well, but I've just been following him ever since then. He's always making creative stuff. I don't know if you've seen his previous apps like Byte and all these other things. But Loot was really compelling because it's actually what I got excited about CryptoKitties for. So a long time ago, you guys know Gabby from Yield Guild, right? Gabby and I met in San Francisco, like let's say summer 2018. And he showed me this little game that they were building that was like an isometric pirate ship game where you like drove your pirate ship around and you blew up other pirate ships, right? But you could bring in your CryptoKitty and it would be the flag on your pirate ship. And the attributes would modify what your ship could do. So it could go faster, it could shoot further, had higher defense, whatever. So in my mind, I always thought that was really cool to think of like the actual NFT as the platform that other people build around. And so maybe like there's one NFT that's like, this obviously applies to Loot, but it's much more explicit because there's no CAD involved. It's just the attributes effectively. But it's like, okay, maybe I build a game where, this set of Loot is super compelling and like very high demand, but someone else built something completely different where, something that was super not valuable in this game is now all of a sudden very, very valuable. And you start to get this sort of like secondary and derivative values associated with the content as a platform. I think a great example is sort of like Jordans. Like Jordans were initially made as a basketball sneaker, but that is not what anyone really uses them for. They've created this whole new value outside of the core value that they were intended for. So anyway, Loot's a very cool one. I'm trying to think off the top of my head. Really big into like handful of crypto toads. Like there's just a lot of we actually have a few of them in our Slack channel. Basically, the whole Slack channel has been taken over by toads. When our designer built like a Figma toad generator, which is pretty tight. So that's been a good one. There's been a couple others. To be candid, I actually have a CryptoPunk that is long gone. One of the people that is just, it's in a MetaMask that is absolutely just lost at sea indefinitely. God rest its soul. And I never got into a Bored Ape, not because I didn't like it, because I was super busy and heads down and I missed the whole window. And I super regret it because I think they're probably some of the dopest looking NFTs out there. So those are the things that I'm excited about. Also, Treeverse, I'm pretty excited. Like any sort of open world thing, that's really where my excitement lies a bit more, is when we start to shift the utility from to something that it can be, bought and sold, to more something that can be used in a material way. So those NFTs I like the ones going in that direction quite a bit. And obviously I should say with that, the Jeff Staple sneaker, anything made by Artifact, those guys, I mean, I think they're really defining any other fashion brand's roadmap for the next 5 years, which is, I mean, they're brilliant.
Spot on, dude. I think we fully align on some of those takes that you mentioned. Love the open source aspect of the open world. But just to kind of close it off, where do you see Bitski fitting in the platform landscape going forward?
Yeah, I think Bitski will, from a platform perspective, we will have, and I guess by the time this goes live, we will have a marketplace that is a bit relaunched from what exists today, where anyone can sign up and can start selling NFTs via a credit card, and will eventually be able to sell their NFTs that they own via a credit card, where basically we abstract away a lot of the blockchain things. You'll also be able to sell on-chain NFTs and things like that as well. But really, we don't want to go head to head with like an OpenSea or even a foundation. We want to enable 100 million different marketplaces to exist. I think that it's important that all of those things are built in a way that are interoperable. So if I do buy something in a hypothetical Rocket League marketplace, that I can still take it to OpenSea, and if I want to sell it there or I want to trade, I think that's important. But I think a lot of folks really, I think, especially when you get into gaming and you're like, I'm on an Xbox or I'm on a PlayStation and I want to participate in a marketplace. I don't want to go to somebody else's. I want to be able to do it natively in that experience, and have a wallet that can traverse all of these places. So I think we really kind of fit in enabling other people to build their own versions of things that they want to do with NFTs, versus being a primary destination. That said, we do have we will have our own marketplace that I think is going to be useful for a lot of people.
Very cool. Well, we eagerly anticipate it and are excited to see what you have in the works. Obviously, exciting things on the horizon. So, yeah, Donnie,
absolutely.
Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, man, absolutely. I'll definitely give you both early test flight access to this new wallet that we're building. I think you guys are going to like it.
Love that.
Love that.
All right. Well, Donnie, thanks again, and we'll catch you next time.
Absolutely. See you guys in a couple weeks.
Cheers, brother.
Wow. We covered a lot of ground in that conversation. Alejandro, what stood out to you?
Man, so many things to pick from, but I'm really, really intrigued and fascinated by Donnie's perspective on the broader NFT capacity. And he's playing a completely different game than most platforms are right now. And I just love how he's thinking about open games, open sourcing, the APIs, and really how he wants to build this as an infrastructure play and not just a platform play beyond NFT art that's going on right now. So I'm really excited to see that future pan out. And he just has such clear conviction to what he's building that anyone should be behind him will succeed.
Yeah, I really appreciated his focus on the user experience. I think that's something that's really key. It gets a lot of, it gets a lot of lip service, but it tends to sometimes fall by the wayside when people are talking about, these sort of 10-year out forecasts and kind of much grander visions of NFT potential. But at the end of the day, it's this mainstream adoption is going to be limited, or it's going to be driven by the ease with which people can use it. And so I think his focus on the wallet and the wallet experience, he kept coming back down to that. keeping it simple, being very focused, as you said, a lot of clear conviction. I think that will serve Bitski well in the future. So great conversation. Excited to see what they do going forward. And, just want to, before we go, remind everyone, if you're enjoying the podcast, please go to your streaming service of choice and leave us a review. Send us some stars our way. And we will catch you again on the NFT Now podcast.